Hi guys, it's John from THKP, and today we're going to be talking about app state management. I'm going to be building 3 separate ways of managing state in your app, and after I build each one, I'll discuss the pros and cons. Now for this project, I'm going to be using this little toy app. You can see it's very simple. It's only 143 lines. And there's actually a lot of unnecessary code. I've basically wrapped all of these widgets just so that I could sort of keep them separated and organized. But the main idea is the global app state. There's a count of apples, there's a count of oranges, and when you click these buttons, which don't do anything right now, it will increment these counts. And these messages here, or these counts here, will reflect that. And this message right here will reflect the changes as well. So if there's more apples, it will say there are currently more apples. So let's jump right in and build these. The first one I want to build is probably one of the top things if you Google how to manage state in a Flutter app. It's the consumer provider approach. And to do this, you first need to include the provider library in your pub spec. So make sure you do that. And you need to define your state. And there's a lot of ways of defining your state, but I'm just going to create 2 separate classes to manage both numbers. You need to extend change notifier, so apple count. And you also need to notify anyone who's listening if your state changes. So I'm gonna do that inside of a method. And the way that you do that is you call notify listeners. I'll create another class for the count of oranges. So somewhere at the top level of your class, you wanna create providers, which will define your objects. So just for now, I'm going to create new instances of these 2 counts, and let's just be explicit and set these to 0. And since I'm notifying my app of multiple different model objects, I need to create multiple change notifier providers. So the way that you do that is you use a multi-provider. And these providers will just be the apple provider and the orange provider. And then instead of calling run app just on my app, I call run app on this whole thing. So our app is wrapped in this multi-provider, so anything inside the app that wants access to these 2 model classes has the ability to implement a consumer. So let's go ahead and implement some consumers for this count and for this button. And right now I'm just going to do it for apples. So this count widget is right here. It's called apple count widget. So let's go into here. And like I mentioned, I just want to return a consumer apple count model builder. So this builder has 3 parameters. It has the context, the current value of the model, and an optional child. And inside here is where I'm just going to copy and paste this, what it's currently returning. And instead of just having the count be 0, I'm going to say value apple count. I spelled model incorrectly, so that's why that wasn't working. I need to rebuild the app in order for these change notifiers to go into effect, so let's go ahead and do that. I need to now update the value. We do that inside of this add apple button, which the code for that is defined down here. So just gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna return a consumer. Now, when you press the button, all you want to do is call our increment count method that we provided earlier. And as I showed you before, here's our increment count button. It calls this notify listeners. So any listeners to this model will be notified. And if you are a consumer widget, which both of these are now consumers of the model, then you will be notified of changes in the model. So let's go ahead and add some apples. We can see that that updates. And just as a sanity check, I've put a couple debugs here. Let's go ahead and clear this for now. But you can see that we're just building the apple count widget and we're rebuilding the buttons. So we're basically only rebuilding the widgets that depend on this state, which is very important because if you have a complex app with hundreds and hundreds of widgets and you change some piece of state, you only want to be updating the widgets that depend on that state. So that's why I added these debugs, just to show that this way of managing your model does accomplish that goal. So now let's do the same thing with oranges. I'm going to do it really quickly because we already did it for apples. Okay, so now you can see both of my counts are updating appropriately. And you can see that when I click the orange button, let's just clear this console. You can see when I click the orange button, only the orange related widgets are rebuilding. And when I click the apple button, only the apple related widgets are rebuilding. So that's good. But usually in a complex app, you'll have multiple widgets that will depend on different pieces of state. So let's implement this widget right here that depends on both counts. So let's see what that looks like. That widget is called the winning fruit indicator. So once again, similar concept, except instead of just consumer, we can return consumer to. So we pass in both models. And our builder just simply, it has the context, it has the apples and oranges, and a child. So this is just a convenience this library provides if you have multiple model states, and it's pretty nice. Let's refresh. There are currently more oranges, and there are currently more apples. And let's just make sure once again that only the right widgets are rebuilding. So when we click apple, we should see that these three widgets rebuild. There we go, winning fruit indicator, add apple button, and add apple count. Oranges, same thing. Winning fruit indicator, orange count, orange button. Okay, so that was a quick implementation of the provider-consumer pattern. My thoughts on this pattern, I like it. I think overall it's a very usable pattern. There's a little bit of boilerplate, but overall it doesn't take a lot of doing in order to just get it up and running. I don't particularly like that it uses types in order to break up different pieces of the model. It would be an anti-pattern to have two of these, for instance. So if I just wanted a count model class and, to have two of them, one for apples and one for oranges, this wouldn't really work properly because they're both the same type. And these consumers wouldn't really know, if I look at one of these consumers, wouldn't really know which count model to use. So I think that's one flaw with this. I also don't like that you have to use these consumers in order to gain access to the model. Now, obviously, you don't have to. You can just pass this object around and use it directly. Like if you have some service classes, what you might do is initialize this, Apple model. And then, you know, create your services and just pass this right in. And then they have access to it directly. But other than if you do some kind of bootstrapping like that, you need to use consumers in order to get access to your model, which just feels a little heavyweight to me. But overall, good pattern, works really nicely. Alright, I think that about covers this pattern. Pretty soon I'll be doing a few more patterns, so stay tuned for that. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, it really helps our channel grow. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.